It's Sunday. That time. Time to get random.
That's a good line.
Well, that was random. Exceptional radio.
So, as I understand it, another starship was lost. For science. I don't even know how much those things cost anymore, but it's only the third one. and you know, I know that NASA and ESA and the Chinese Space Agency and Roscosmos have all lost considerable amounts of vessels in their attempt to perfect space flight. But, you know, that was like in the early days. That was like in the 60s. That was over half a century ago. They've had 60 plus years to figure this stuff out. And it's like, for science, we're going to blow up another giant penis shaped rocket. And they lost the heavy lift vehicle, the heavy booster.
Mm-hmm.
I thought these things were supposed to be recoverable. That was like the whole point. It's like, yeah,
That's if they don't break up over the ocean. Well, the only reason I even found out it was happening was because I saw congratulations Elon trending, and I'm like, what happened? What did he do? And then like all of the tweets were like, congratulations on a successful Starship launch. And I'm like, I didn't even know that was happening. And then you go to the actual news outlets and they're like, Starship likely broke up over ocean. And it's like, how do the disconnect between reality and Elon's world that his fanboys are living in it will be studied.
See, now I'm convinced that there are way more people that are into like launching tubes full of sugar and whatever the other agent is they use as a propellant. You know, those model rocketry. Now I'm convinced there are way more people into that because, you know, they're pretty content with losing their rocket at the end of every launch. It seems like those things seem to either explode or when they come back to Earth, they're like really messed up. And so it makes sense that his explode or come back to Earth really messed up. Just,
you know, in discussing this, it's making me wonder if the people who appear to be fanboys are actually the same group of people that like trolled Sony into re-releasing Morbius. Because it's like, think about it. These people exist now that will pretend to like something to get a corporation to waste money on that thing, thinking that these people are like really into it. And like, I feel like it's been forgotten that Sony released Morbius, had it flop, had those people meme it back into re-releasing and flopping a second time. Because I think that's where I'm like, I want to believe that those people are the ones cheering on Elon instead of the people actually being in some weird cult. I know the Elon fanboy cult is real, but I also want to believe that these people are trolling him into like just destroying everything that he's built so far, or not built, stolen and purchased. Because that's where I'm like, he just bought his way into all these things and then basically burns them down once he gets a hold of them.
Well, it looks like the FAA is going to investigate this Starship Launch 3 test flight. They've got questions now. Apparently, he didn't file his paperwork to detonate a launch booster system over the ocean.
Oh, shit. Well, and because they're taking that endeavor specifically takes subsidies, is not the majority of their funding, but they still take subsidies like every year. So they'll have to answer to the government somewhat, at least. And it's like they had been getting contracts with NASA and with the Air Force. So I can't imagine Elon deciding to do something that is out of line with the FAA going over well. I don't think he's in their good graces anymore. And a lot of it has to do with the Ukraine situation where he was like,
oh man,
not willing to play ball at first and then had to be forced into aligning with the US military interests in Ukraine and then disaligned himself with those interests again. So he's playing with fire in a way where I think he like I think he's lost touch with reality. And he just happens to be a super wealthy person. and we're seeing the undoing of Elon in real time. And if you like look at the things he's been tweeting and the people he's been platforming by retweeting them, he's not the same. Whether he's grifting or actually drifting, it doesn't matter because the appearance is the same. So it's like, I know a lot of people will do this right-wing grift where if they're pundits at all, or if their livelihood depends on any sort of political punditry, over time they start drifting to the right because people on the left, the farther left you go, the less willing people are to like casually support something with money, not because they are unable or unwilling, but they get more skeptical about it being some sort of grift, because then you get to like not the far left, but the appearance of far left that are grifters, and you get the Sean Kings and the Rachel Dolezals that are like white people pretending to be black to lead movements that they have no business leading because they're actually just trying to make money. And those people exist on the left, so you know damn well they exist on the right. It's like the ones that we know about, like the Ann Coulters and the Bill O'Reillys and the Rush Limbaughs, the people who are, they might have some right-wing leanings, but they'll say some extreme right-wing shit to make some money and not give a fuck what they're saying. Like, I don't even think Alex Jones falls into that group, because if you look at him, he knows he was doing satire and he knows he was grifting. And the only reason he ever had to expose it was when he got put in a like court situation where he actually had to be under oath. And if he perjured himself, he could potentially get criminal charges for perjury, even though it wasn't a criminal case at the time. It's like, I think if you perjure and it's found to be perjury, like it can still be a civil suit and you can still potentially go to jail or prison depending on the gravity. So it's like,
but beyond that, once someone perjures themselves, it's like on the record for all time that they're a liar.
Right, exactly.
And they have like absolutely zero
record, yeah.
credibility. And it doesn't matter what they say at that point. They've perjured themselves.
So this is one of the reasons the ruling against him was such a big deal. In the case, him having to like acknowledge that his show was an act, and he knew it was an act. So it's like he doesn't really believe in the things he was saying. But it's like, if you go look when he's like pretending to be Cobra Commander, if you don't take it seriously, it's actually pretty fucking funny. So like a lot of the shit he says, if you take it as satire and if you take it as him doing a character and don't think that he's like the only real source of information, it's funny. But when people start acting on it and start showing up at a place and trying to threaten the owner of a pizza shop because they think he's a pedophile and he's like having some shit go on in his basement because they couldn't discern between satire and reality, there's a whole...
A pizza shop that didn't have a physical basement to begin with.
Right. There's a whole litany of reasons that those people exist. Alex Jones is one of those. No Child Left Behind is one of the biggest reasons. But Santa Claus is a reason. So you can't have these people who grow up being lied to about this fictional fucking fat man fitting down a goddamn chimney through some still undiscerned magical origin. We don't know what kind of magic he uses. It's fucking Santa magic, even though they've disconnected him from his roots in the actual, like, any sort of people who could be recognized as like actually being the origin of this person. Santa ain't got shit to do with that. So you raise these people tell them fucking Santa's real, and then give them Christianity on top of that, and then give them Christmas, and then they don't know what the fuck Christmas is about, but they're like willing to go to war over it. The war against Christmas is real. Motherfucker, you don't even know what it's about. So why are you trying to defend it so hard? You got these people as like the base. Of course they're not going to be able to tell if fucking Bill O'Reilly or Alex Jones is real, because they grew up thinking fucking Santa was real until they were like, I don't know how old, till they were maybe teenager. I don't know what point somebody who ever believes Santa is real stops believing Santa is real. Like I can't empathize with that mind. Like I always assume that somebody who says they have imaginary friends knows they're fucking with people and are like just trying to manipulate people. Like I don't really believe anybody who ever says they have an imaginary friend actually sees or imagines anybody, unless they're schizophrenic. That's different. But a person really who's not schizophrenic saying they have an imaginary friend, or who doesn't have dementia. I've seen somebody with dementia. They don't know if the person they're talking to is real or not. That's different. And that's why I think the person who says they have an imaginary friend is fucking lying about it, because they can turn that on and off. If you see somebody that isn't there and you don't know if that person is real or not, that person's behavior to other people around them seems off. It's not engaged in a reality that we're seeing. And if you see it in real time, in real life, it's like, I don't know if any real media portrayal has ever gotten it right, because I don't know. When they were portraying it, clearly nobody had ever been exposed to schizophrenia or dementia. So all of these portrayals are just like off. And then you get these people who then mimic dissociative identity disorder based on what they've seen on television. And that becomes a whole different epidemic of like people. It's like a psychological hypochondriac that also wants attention. And that's a whole, because that's still a problem. That's still a psychological problem. It's just not the one that they're trying to say they have. So then it becomes this like, you can't necessarily take someone at their word about their psychological health anyway. So to then be in a situation where you have people who are like mimicking psychological problems for attention, or because they have another psychological problem, it just makes it so there are going to be a lot of people who fall through the cracks, especially when America actively moves away from taking mental health seriously. So we had this long period of like between, I want to say, whenever America was founded and until about 1997, 98, nobody took mental health seriously. And then right around 1998, some people started taking it seriously, and those people got pushed to a fringe, to a point where once the kids who grew up understanding that there was at least a small group of people who are willing to protect their mental health existed, then you got a big wave of people who cared about mental health because they were the kids who grew up seeing. What's funny is if you look at like Beavis and Butthead, the characterization of, was it Mr. Andreessen?
Oh, Mr. Anderson.
He's a caricature of that post-hippie, emotionally available generation that is the natural repercussion of having emotionally unavailable boomers and people before them who didn't have the capacity to tell their own family members, I love you, or things like that. So they became the natural counter movement, but also in being a small minority, they were subject of mockery. So even if you go back and look at like Do you remember It's Pat on SNL?
Yeah, that was a
The
really
skit?
uncomfortable
They
skit.
made now it's uncomfortable.
I mean, it was
But
uncomfortable
then it killed. It wasn't uncomfortable then. You're imposing modern cringe on
No, I mean that skit made
old
me uncomfortable at the
times.
time. I wouldn't watch it.
I mean,
I absolutely never watched it. That shit came on, and I was like, "Sorry, Saturday Night Live. I'm gonna go get a beverage." I couldn't do it.
I'm sure
that movie was
to
like
a sense of like I mean again, the times like we're talking about, people were using the F word and calling people like Jews who weren't Jewish to imply certain types of things. It was a completely different time. So that's why I'm like, the whole reason the Pat skit was on like SNL is because something like that wasn't something people were concerned with. Like, people were not concerned with offending the androgynous person. Like, they were the subject of mockery to the point. Again, that's the whole reason I'm pointing at Pat, is because during that like pre 1998-ish period, there was like no care for people's feelings in the mainstream. And what I'm saying is, the kids growing up at that time then became the adults in the early 2000s that became quote unquote politically correct. And the boomers who are still alive are trying to make it seem as if it like was some political movement, when it's just a bunch of people learned empathy, is what I'm getting at. So this is where I'm like, there's like a marked point in our media where you can go back and see, oh, people didn't have empathy because you have shit like Pat, like, and in the process, you have church lady. So you have Dana Carvey cross-dressing, playing this character. So it's not the androgyny that's funny. It's the fact that there's a group of people that everyone knows exists that we're going to make fun of, and we're okay with that as a culture. That's why It's Pat existed, because it was okay to mock any sort of androgynous, potentially trans person at the time, and nobody thought to stop it. You may have not watched it, but nobody thought to stop it. And at a certain point, people began to interject and say, maybe we shouldn't do this type of skit, or maybe we shouldn't do a movie based on this type of character. And the people who wanted to laugh at that character felt attacked because they could no longer consume media like that freely without criticism. And that's where I mean, like, those people want to consume media uncritically and not have to discern whether it's reality or not. And that's like not really Alex Jones's fault, even though he's a major contributor to it. So that's why I'm like, on the one hand, he's definitely responsible for his own actions, but you actually can't really blame him for the people who show up with guns at the fucking pizza place because they didn't know he was doing a skit. So like, I'm torn in that I now realize there's this self-imposed ignorance that like Americans use the First Amendment incorrectly and use that misunderstanding of constitutional expression to allow. There's certain, like, they're even outlawing learning about things. So like now, not only do they not have to learn about slavery in certain states, it's like a person might get in trouble for trying to teach American history about certain real things that happen. And like, the reason this is on my mind is I went to it was like a 1-to-1 replica of a slave ship that had like the sounds of what the slaves would have been doing and experiencing in that situation. And I'd never been in anything like that before. So it was like, hold up. Why am I just now experiencing this? Because I specifically remember as a kid when we had to go to the Holocaust Museum, and like I remember the effect it had on the Jewish kids that were in my class. And it's like knowing how the Holocaust affected my Jewish classmates, okay. And this is like, as a Black person in America, I have no connection to that. My fucking relatives didn't do that shit. My relatives weren't the subject of it. So I actually have literally no connection to that. But to see my Jewish classmates understand what happened, that became my connection to it, by understanding the pain that they were still suffering to this day, or, you know, whatever it was 30 years ago now, because of that thing that had happened 50 years ago. So like, I'm looking at this now, connecting those two events where I'm like, how did I, as a 41-year-old Black man, only experience this now when this is American history, when the Holocaust is not American history? That's German history. Why am I learning? But it's not to say we need to learn about the Holocaust. That's not the issue. Is why is this thing that affects so many American people being compartmentalized and pushed in a way that they do not understand the atrocity that happened? And it's only if you don't understand the atrocity that occurred during slavery can you come to some ridiculous fucking stances that like at least 50% of Americans have come to, if not more, like 75%. Like the centrist Democrats that like believe in capitalism also don't know enough about slavery. They also don't know enough about chattel slavery. And it's like, if you don't have a genetic connection to it one way or another, you might not understand it. But let me put it in a way, especially you might understand. Like, if I look at something like the Opium War, I have no real connection to that. But somebody who's of like Chinese and British descent is probably going to have, or China or Indian and British descent, or one or the other. They're probably going to have a strong reaction to anything. I mean, potentially, maybe, not necessarily. If they know enough about it, they probably will. But even people who don't know about these things end up having genetic reactions because of genetic trauma. So it's like, I'm looking at the way that all of these different atrocities have happened, but also understanding that when you don't have a connection to something, it's really easy to just overlook it if you never actually understand what happened. And in seeing, it's like, I don't know what the proper age for Americans to start learning about this stuff, but you can't get to 18 and not learn about this stuff. And from 2024 and beyond, we can't let Americans into the world not knowing the shit that happened in this fucking country. Because then I'm like, I learned about the Trail of Tears, but did I really understand the implications of it as a kid? No, not really, because they didn't really teach the implications of what the Trail of Tears actually means into modern. Like, the crazy shit about the way we learn about Native Americans in America is like, they get relegated to history as if they don't fucking still exist. Like, as if there's not, I mean, they're not significant, as if there's not a population, I think it's like 5% or something, a population of people that still exist that classify as the ones that they want to put in the history books to justify letting the reservations not have clean water, or justify ignoring the fact that people on reservations have teenage suicide rates at some of the highest in the world, let alone the nation. It's some of the highest suicide rates in the world, to the point when I was like visiting, I went and visited Pine Ridge, which is like one of the poorest reservations. Like a kid tried to commit suicide that day. He didn't succeed, but it's like, that's how rampant teen suicide is in the reservations. But you don't fucking learn about that shit if you only learn about them in the history books. And this is the same shit to me as when Africa gets lumped as like one continent and not 54 countries. It allows people to compartmentalize it to the past. So their idea of any African country is only represented through this homogenous post-colonial construction of a pre-industrialized state, which represents a continent, into a nebulous, this nebulous like mud hut. And they don't even understand how many people are there, because I don't actually care if they know enough, but it's funny that the population, like the Chinese population is always the focus of like American fear of being out fucked or whatever it is. I don't know, like the great replacement fear, whatever that comes from. It's so focused on China that they miss India and the African continent in the process. It's like, yeah, there's like 1.4 billion people in China, but there's like 1.2 in Africa, and there's like 1.2 in India. So it's like the hyper Sinoid focus is hilarious, because then it
looks like the world meter says the population of the African continent is 1.48 billion people.
Yeah. And like over, I want to say, I think it's like, I think over 75% are under 35, and then over 50% are under 18. So it's like a super young continent.
Yeah, that's some pretty good numbers.
Yeah, and the crazy shit is, it's like when you see it in person, it's like nothing like being represented in Western media in terms of the capacity to operate daily and shit like that. It's like, even in slums, even in like the biggest slum, people just have like normal daily lives. It's you wouldn't think, based on the way that it's being presented, you would think everybody in a slum is like constantly fighting for their lives against some fucking machete gang or some shit. Whereas no, it's not even remotely like that. Like yeah, you can't just like hang your fucking purse out the window or something and not expect somebody to snatch it. But you can't do that here either. You know what I'm saying? So like the dumb shit that people do and become subject of crime that they could have avoided, it's like the same. Like,
I mean, obviously, because like, America is all like Sons of Anarchy and Rick and Morty. It makes sense, right? Because if we're to be informed by our media, then let's see. China is like super, super advanced, but they've got like really messed up, like ineffective law enforcement. And in Russia, everyone's a criminal. And in Europe, they're actually European. They're like one homogenous entity, which is completely messed up too. And everyone in South America is part of a cartel. And what other kind of horrible shit can I say right now? Fuck. Our media has screwed up global culture so bad. Why is it that all the stories we have to endure on like, you know, serialized, why is it all crime, why is it always showing like the absolute worst? I mean, is it because normal people aren't interesting? Weird shit doesn't happen to normal people? Is that what it is?
There's a white gaze. There's a white gaze that media constantly tries to please. And when it doesn't try to please that white gaze, it stands out. For example, the Black Panther movie. Not the second one necessarily, because the second one was definitely trying to please, if not totally cater to the white gaze. So that's where it's weird. As a Black person, I know when I'm looking at something that has been made for the white gaze, because it'll feel like if I see a Black person and they look hollow as a character, I'm like, oh, a Black person had nothing to do with the construction of the character, even though it's being portrayed by a Black person. And that's usually the indicator. It's like if a character feels just hollow and doesn't feel like there's anything behind it, it's usually because the person writing it has no actual connection to the thing that's supposed to be driving that character. And specifically with Black characters, you'll feel that where like across all media, where it's like a lot of times the only motivation they'll have will revolve around a white protagonist or even a white supporting character it's like not for lack of trying on the part of the Black actors, but it's because a lot of these writing rooms will then not have any Black people. And the same shit happens with women where you're like, this character as a woman sounds like it was written by a man. And when you feel that, it probably was. And it's like 9 out of 10 times, if you're ever watching something where it feels like that, like no shade against Ridley Scott, but like it's the same type of shit with Ripley where you're like, it's not to say it has nothing to do with a woman's capacity to be a badass, especially in a fictional universe. Like once you're in a fictional universe, gender is completely irrelevant in terms of capacity gender is never really relevant in terms of capacity to be a badass in the first place. But like once you start including magic and like superpowers, it negates any reason for the believability to have to be associated with the man. So like that idea for me that an action hero always had to be a man never made sense, especially like the more magic it got. The only reason in a more real context it would need to be like that is like because women weren't allowed in the military at the time. So it's like, yeah, you can't have G.I. Jane couldn't have been made before they started allowing women to serve in the military like the way they did. So it's like it's not even the fact that it would have been.
Man, you got me thinking about like every anime where the lead character is a strong female, and specifically Ghost in the Shell, where all of the most badass assassin cyborgs are female body types because they have some kind of biometric advantage, I guess. Weight distribution.
No, I don't think they do. There's just no.
No, they really do.
It just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but
that's what I'm saying. In that universe,
I think they send in the female body types dressed as geishas to kill people.
I mean, they use
cultural idioms.
Well, in terms of like, they still use like deception and things like that in that universe. But I'm saying like the makeup of the team isn't determined by sex; it's determined by skill.
Yeah,
and in that universe, skill has nothing to do with gender. Because they're not like, oh, men are better at shooting and women are better at like leg locks because their lower bodies are stronger. Like, no, they're just like a lot of them happen to be women. And it's like, maybe I'm missing something. I don't think there's nothing explicitly in that universe as far as I know where they're like, oh, no, we prefer women agents. Like, no, it just happens to be a lot of women agents.
I think there's an episode where the Major extends an explanation why she chooses female body types, cyborg like combat body types.
No, the major,
but she's also female.
but not
so.
not everybody. Like, she's not the only badass woman in
Of
that
course not.
series.
No,
That's
not
what I'm
at all.
saying.
Yeah.
Like,
That
well,
series
'cause
is also.
she was a woman. I think she was a woman before she became the major. Like,
Oh yeah, she was a young
it's like,
woman who
it's
was
not-
injured in a plane
yeah.
crash, and
It's not like she was a dude and then started choosing female body types. Like, no, she was a young girl.
She also pilots. She like takes over, remotely controls cyborg bodies from time to time. They don't have to be female. They can be anything.
Because I mean, well, and that's the premise of Ghost in the Shell in terms of them being able to go into different bodies. So like, I think going back to a female form definitely has some implications in terms of what that character's preference is, but it's not something that reflects a larger societal gender assignment. And that's where I'm like, in multiple, it's not just anime, but like there's multiple non-Western stories that don't just relegate the badassery to the males. And that's where I'm like, I think seeing that happen and drift into Western media is what made the boomers and the previous generation upset, in that they were so used to like, it can only be John Wayne that's the badass.
They're just
like,
mad because we don't like John Wayne anymore.
I mean, that's true, but it's also like the fucking choreography was terrible. So like, before martial arts got introduced into Western media, the fights were horrible. Yeah. And then once it got introduced, the fights were still pretty bad by modern standards, but that's when it was so different that it that's what I think contributed to a lot of the mythicization of anything Asian, is like these new fighting styles that weren't just completely haymaker wind up punches that you could see from fucking outer space coming, that they didn't do anything but throw haymakers before martial arts came in. And so once this like new
big fist
type of fighting, it's like, oh, these Chinese people must be magic if they can fight. Like, so there's this like then swing to such a degree. Like, that's why fucking Bruce Lee is still mythicized to this day and romanticized. It's like the Western media was so devoid of any sort of flair in that area that once it got introduced, it was like, do you remember when neon came out, like neon colors?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It was like
on
that.
Everything. You get neon paint.
Because I can only imagine when it went from, I mean, TV could have always been color, but they chose black and white for various reasons. I can only imagine going from color, or from black and white to color television, as being the most apt metaphor from going to pre-martial arts fight scenes to post-martial arts fight scenes, as like, it's like, oh shit, I couldn't see all this color before because it wasn't there. Like, it may have been there at one point, but it was no longer there in any form. And now it's colorful and it, like, when neon colors started coming out, I felt like people had a hard time reconciling what to do with them, which is why you and I both lived through this period where people were just doing insane color combinations. It was fucking insane.
I still have some like windbreakers that under black light completely change. They look like a completely different jacket. And they're also ridiculously large. Like I wouldn't want to wear one outside today. I'd get blown over. It's like wearing a sail.
And that's another issue, is like the clothes sizing. Mass-produced clothing resulted in clothing trends that didn't depend upon fitting correctly and sometimes would lean into like misfitting on the person. And that's where knowing now the difference between clothes that are tailored for me and made specifically for my size versus things that I'm wearing, trying to like go along with the trend, it feels a lot different. And I think feeling comfortable in one's own skin in public can be a lot about the clothes that you're wearing, and like wearing clothes towards a trend instead of things that are tailored for you is almost never going to be comfortable. It's like going to be really hard to find proper fitting clothes. And that's where I'm like, all the times I felt uncomfortable, like trying to wear something for fashion's sake, it could have easily been remedied by finding something that was more tailored for me specifically. But that wasn't the culture. That I don't even know if it's the culture now.
You know, it's weird. At
so much
raves,
as me just learning
like,
to do it.
UFOs are awkward. They're like pajamas, but at a rave, they're like performance wear because they dry out really quickly, and they're not like, they don't have that much insulation, so you won't overheat. But they're also awkward to wear out anywhere because they're gigantic, and they really are just like super pajamas.
All of them weren't equal though, and I found
That's
out
true.
like some of them had thicker, less breathable fabric, and
Yeah,
it would
some
be
were
like
super thin.
Yeah, the thinner ones were better for more activity, which again, it's like knowing that was the difference between $100 pair of pants, $120 pair of pants, and a $60 pair. It was like my brain did not yet understand that it was better to get the $120 pair because I would have a better time. It's and I could get the $60 pair and look the way I wanted, but feel uncomfortable.
The $120 pair of UFOs, those things breathe like they're made out of like some kind of space age material, and they dry out almost instantly, which is another space age material type quality. It's it's high performance wear. It's like if you're gonna go do athletic stuff like cross training, you want to wear clothing that breathes properly and that helps you to move properly. But it might not be the kind of thing you want to wear to like any kind of function, because it's like, do you just leave the gym? It's like, no, I'm just wearing this stuff. You gonna go work out? No, I'm just wearing this stuff.
Well, and again, it was learning, that the $60 pair, the strings break faster, and the the buttons pop off.
The straps inside like, the pockets that you use to hold things into your pockets rip out, and they just fail. Sometimes those pants were like way over designed and would like suffer catastrophic failure. Someone steps on it because it's not like strapped up properly. Next thing you know, someone's walking around with a giant rip up their pants because.
Well, and I had been thinking about this recently because I have like fitted jeans, and then there's jeans that have elastic in them, and it's like they both feel way better than like extra baggy jeans where you have to constantly make sure that either the jeans aren't falling down or aren't dragging on the ground. It's like those two things, once you don't have to worry about either one, the experience of wearing jeans is so much better. And that's where it's like, it shouldn't matter what shoe I'm wearing with my jeans. They shouldn't be dragging on the ground, regardless if it's like a low profile or high profile shoe. If they're fit correctly, it won't drag on the ground regardless. But when you're a kid, you don't fucking care. And it's like, I had so many jeans over the course of my life that would have that like wear on the back where it would drag on the ground, and it's like you can tell over time that that part of the jean used to have a hem, but the hem has like worn out, and now it's just like, you know, denim material that's rugged. And if they had like made it that way on purpose, somebody would pay extra for it, but it was that way from where. So having enough of those jeans over my life where I don't pay attention to the fit and then see the repercussions, it's like once I got rid of that, then they started lasting longer. So it's like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you know,
No.
things you don't do as a kid.
I have jeans that last for so long that, you know, I don't buy jeans often, and then I end up buying a bunch of jeans all at once because like I actually have 3 pair that I got all at the same time, and they're all wearing out evenly because I've had them for about a decade now. And I added another pair of jeans like 5 years ago, and they still look good. And then my most recent edition, they're only 3 years old. I had to cut them short because they fit really good at around the waist and the butt, but the legs were a little long. I have short legs though, and that's something I have to deal with. But those pants are still in, like, other than having been shortened, they're like still pretty much perfect. And it's crazy how something as durable as denim could wear out just because it's the wrong size. But then when it's the correct size, all of a sudden it's like a lifetime. Actually, I think I have a denim jacket that's been around like at least 2 decades, if not more, that I wear regularly in the fall.
Yeah, the irony is denim is like a working man's fabric.
It's supposed to last.
Person's fabric. And it was originally for like people in the mines and shit, but then it became, you know, just like many
Fashion
things
fabric.
do. Yes, it became fashion fabric. So, you know, I think then they started distressing it on, you know, before it came out. So it would fall apart faster. So we'd have to go through our cycles faster and shit. It's,
You know,
fashion.
it's funny though. Like a really good pair of blue jeans, like you put them on, they're stiff. They don't feel comfortable. You got to wear them for like a week. You got to sweat in them and stretch them a little bit and loosen them up so that they move right.
But that's why elastic is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's either elastic or spandex, whatever the fuck material they put in it. That changes the game because it's like, man, the first time I put them on, I could do like a kick above my head.
You could actually move in them. It wasn't like putting on a leather glove.
I could do the split. I mean, if I could do the splits, I would have been able to do them and not fucking bust the pants. Because it's like, yeah, they flex and move in a way where I'm like, you know, I love science and I love technology, and clearly that is a superior gene in terms of movement. Because the idea of having to break in jeans, I get it, but yeah, we have better technology now. The fucking spandex or elastic, it literally becomes as if you're wearing like a superhero suit.
Yeah, and also like duck canvas is way more durable than denim, and it's, you know, not prohibitively expensive to get a pair of duck canvas like coveralls or work pants just for doing like, you know, the kind of stuff that would destroy modern blue jeans. So it's like, again, that comes back to like specialized outerwear. At some point, specialized outerwear is, you know, a good thing, provided it's affordable. If it's not, if it's like unobtainable, then that's just, it might as well be vapor. Might as well not exist even. I think that's the problem that I have right now with everything I read about like solar technology. It's the existing available technology is comprised of materials that come at great environmental cost and are not really recyclable. And then the new generation of technology that's promised to us is, you know, it's just a few years away every time. Every time I read about it, it's like, you know, it's on the horizon. It's going to happen soon. We're going to get these technologies that aren't going to destroy the earth to get there. And it's frustrating because it's like, man, I know we need to get there. What's wrong? Why is there just like not enough transparency in the process? Hasn't this stuff already been paid for through like tax dollar investment in new energy technology? And the part that bothers me, of course, is that there's still the big push to adopt all this stuff when clearly the costs are not being disclosed. And I'm not even getting into like the predatory nature of small companies that are leasing solar panels to people instead of just outright selling them. Or the fact that in some places, some states are passing legislation to limit the amount of that power providers can buy back electricity from people with solar panels. Like putting the more you generate at some point means you'll get less per kilowatt delivered back into the grid.
See, it's the shit like that we don't see happening. And I'm assuming some fucking oil lobbyist is at the root of it. But we have these like bad faith actors in our system that will undermine any sort of progress and then point at the thing and make it seem like that thing isn't working. And
I mean, solar absolutely works, but the slow roll on technology that already exists, that's the part that it's like it's the Brave New World syndrome where like we've got 5 generations of technology to deliver, but we just have to wait to recoup the investment on the first generation of technology.
That's in a situation where you don't have somebody working to make it so you can't recoup that first generation investment. Because then you look at fucking, we got planes falling apart in the sky. Who do you think was lobbying against high-speed rails? The same motherfuckers that put out subpar planes that are falling apart in the sky are the goddamn reason we don't have fucking high-speed rails. So it's like, how do we as individuals navigate as if we're not operating against people who are working against us on both sides? Because that's where like I can then understand the need to try to find some sort of rationale or logic behind it, and then the resulting conspiracy theories that ensue and fill in the gaps, because none of this shit makes any fucking sense, because it's the government can't work for both sides. It just can't. It can't successfully ever work for both sides, which is why we need unions. And that's where, to me, it's like in corporations propagandizing against unions, they have created an imbalance where our government works for the highest bidder. The corporations have more money. They can't work for us as individuals because we get outbid. So then when the propaganda makes it so that you have a large population of people who aren't willing to support unionization, and also, depending on who's in power, are going to either support marginalization by legislation or are going to push against legislation that would help marginalized people. Again, we have to deal with motherfuckers who are worried about Sky Daddy more than are willing to like learn about American history. So it's like we are in a weird, like, politics is all, it's all bullshit. Like popularity contest at this point. So I don't even look to politics as being anything but that. But when actual solutions are being lobbied against by people and corporations who then have vested interest in making my life as an individual worse because I'm just a number on paper to them, then it becomes no longer, it's like active. We have active aggression against us as individuals on the part of corporations looking to put things in our food, put things in our air, make our costs higher without doing anything to make our lives better. The government is meant to protect us from that, but when those lobbyists on their behalf by the government, then we have no protection. And when those corporations then, I won't say put out the Alex Joneses, but pay the Alex Joneses to muddy the waters even more, I think America has there's a cycle of stability in this polarized nature, but the problem is that it's becoming more reactionary on the right wing with not enough reaction from the left, so the right wing keeps gaining more power. So there's this need for a polarized political landscape to have equal and opposite reactionaries, but the left isn't actually doing that. So I think that's where we're like seeing this rightward drift. And it's the funny thing is it's temporary because the kids growing like this is why when you look at the grand scheme, it's not actually that big of a deal because all the kids coming up are going to be an even bigger reactionary wave than our generation was to the previous. So it's like we just have to like ride it out. But all the kids growing up, seeing this shit happening now, sake like the 30% of males who benefit from patriarchy, everybody else is going to effectively have this like massive counter swing against everything. Like everything, no matter what it is, it doesn't even matter what it is. Right now, everything that's a problem in our media, everything that's a problem in our news, there's going to be a counter wave against it in like 20 years when these kids growing up are adults. And the people who are shouting, reading the news now are about to go into nursing homes. And then all the kids that are growing up now are going to have to decide what to do with those people going into nursing homes. We're going to see a fucking massive shift in how things operate because that's where it's like, when they don't need people to like feed them and bring them food and make sure that they can like get in the shower or get in the bathtub or whatever, they're going to say some ridiculous shit and do things that are actually going to result in a shorter lifespan for the planet. Once they start getting on their deathbed and it's like they know that they're dependent upon other people, their fucking tones start to change. So it's like the kids growing up now, I'm wondering if they're gonna forgive their grandparents and their parents and shit. Or if they're gonna, we might see one of the most massive disownings in the other direction in coming years. Like the way Elon Musk's kid
Wait, which one?
disowned
Kyle?
him.
Oh, no.
No. The one that disowned him doesn't want to be associated with the Musk name. I don't know if they released the new name, but they changed their name because they no longer wanted to be associated with Elon Musk as their like at all. They aren't getting any money, no inheritance, not the Musk name, nothing. That is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think we're going to see a massive amount of young people disowning their families because they're going to realize that they can, because what I realize has happened is a lot of white people don't have any sense of community, and that extends to their own family. So you have a lot of white families that don't support them like each other. And when these kids grow up and they turn 18 and they haven't been receiving financial support and they don't need anything from these people, they're not going to stay connected to them for anything. And not to say that people stay connected in ways that they shouldn't for money, but it's a lot easier to leave a situation that's abusive when you're not financially dependent on that situation. So that's where I'm like, when you have all of these families treating the young people as if they're chattel, like, I think we've talked about this before in that white people definitely see non-white people as chattel, but they see their own kids as chattel too. And that is not, it's like British and American white people. I don't know about white people anywhere else. I know about British and American white people because those are the white people in my bloodline and those are the white people I grew up with. So I know for a fact that a large percentage of American white people don't see non-white people as humans, and they don't see other white people as humans in many cases. So it's like, that's a fact. I'm not trying to like break new fucking ground here. That's something that is part of American history and part of its culture. That's just a fact. The issue is those same people don't want to deal with the repercussions of treating people as chattel and then having a society that's not okay with that. And so I think that's where, again, in like 10, 20 years, these white kids that are growing up seeing everybody under the age of 18 being treated like chattel, non-white people who are over 18 being treated like chattel, while white adults here's the difference. If you're a white adult and you have money, you have earned the right not to be treated like chattel by other white people. But if you're white trash, quote unquote, you're just as much chattel to the fucking Sackler family as anybody else. And they'll go in your family and they'll get your kid addicted to fucking opium, and they're going to take all the money from your family, and they're not going to put any money into fucking rehab in your region. They're going to put more money into making it illegal so that they can take you and your family, put you in prison, pump that prison full of more opioids, and then make it seem like it was your fault because you got addicted to drugs. So when white people are doing that to other white people, the white kids are going to see it. It's only a matter of time before white kids en masse understand that they're chattel too. And only if they make it out of the, what's the white version of the hood? I don't know.
The suburbs?
The trailer park. The trailer park. If they make it out of the trailer park, then they can matter too. And again, Eminem is that dude. Eminem is that kid. There's going to be a bunch of Eminems in like 20, and I don't mean as far as wealth. I mean the kid that grew up surrounded by people who were oppressed, thinking because of what society is telling him that he has a choice to decide if he's better than those people because of the color of his skin, or if those things are lies. He understood those things are lies. And because of that, he got embraced by those people, and it was able to get him in a place where he could get out of the trailer park, not necessarily because of any specific group of people, but it was his ability to not get wrapped up in the idea that his worth was tied to where he was at the time. Because I think that's the issue, is like, so much of American propaganda is like, you're only as valuable as the job you have right now, because that's what you're contributing to society. And in a lot of cases, that's going to mean most people aren't really that valuable. And it gets reinforced in the church, and it gets reinforced by prosperity Christianity that makes it seem like, oh, God's going to give you financial blessings if you're just here every Sunday. And if you just put 10% of your income into the fucking plate we pass around, God's going to bless you financially.
For only 10%, you too can be blessed by God.
Yeah, that's the environment that people have to grow up in, and then learn to value themselves outside of what's in their bank account, or how many square feet their house has, or how many pairs of fucking Gucci jeans, or whatever the fuck it is that people are trying to make seem as if those are the things that give them the right to exist as a human, the right to, like,
I mean, obviously Gucci tracksuits are God approved. That's like a
in
given,
America,
right?
you know what's not God approved? Poor people enjoying life.
Ugh.
If you're poor, you're not allowed to enjoy a second of your life in America. And that's the craziest shit to me, in that,
Yeah, you have to earn everything in this country, right?
exactly. Yes. If you're poor, you can't eat lobster, no matter what. If somebody gave it to you, you can't eat that. You can't eat steak. You're poor. You need to take that money and save it. Oh, somebody offers you lobster? No, take the money and save it instead. You aren't allowed to have a moment of experiencing anything quality in life because you're not rich yet. That's how America treats poor people. And to me, not only is that the like exact opposite of what actual Jesus was teaching in the like very few passages he actually says anything in the Bible, it's like so disconnected from what I would imagine. If a God existed that created experiences for a human to experience, the idea that a poor person does not get to experience those things because they have not yet made enough money in someone else's eyes to be deserving of that experience that this apparent God made, like, that's like bringing a caste system to religion that, I mean, and life experience, obviously, but the American caste system is so deeply ingrained in our culture that it sounds revolutionary to suggest that a poor person should be able to like eat a steak ever so often, or like eat lobster, or whatever people think as like rich people food, or whatever rich people experiences. Like, a poor person can't go to Disney World. A poor person can't go to Kings Island. A poor person can't get a PS5 because they need to make sure that if they have any sort of extra income, they need to make sure they're saving that to get out of poverty, as if it's not society's fault that they're in poverty. So like, to put the onus of getting out of poverty on the individual, on a society that puts individuals in those positions, is like, it's unreasonable it's illogical, but it's also something that a chattel system would do. So like I I I see the trajectory out of chattel. It's not linear. It's not linear. It goes in waves, but we are slowly moving out of a chattel state in this country. It's not gone by any means. It didn't end with the abolition of slavery by any means. It didn't just move to prisons by any means, but I think also like what exploiters call capitalism depends upon chattel, and that's where like I think actual capitalism doesn't really depend upon chattel, but I don't know if we've really ever seen actual capitalism. So like in the same way that we've never seen utopian communism, I don't know if we've seen utopian capitalism where it's actually just a supply meeting a demand with no exploitation. Like for whatever reason, the people who practice capitalism can't not exploit something along the way. So it's like, yeah, we're gonna put filler in your food, or gonna like make your parts on your plane so that they might fall apart because we need more profit.
I've got
like
it. There is one example of a pure form of capitalism, and it involves woodworkers who grow their own materials on the property that they own or lease. I guess that renders it back into like the non-pure capitalism if they have to lease it. Anyways, assuming that they own their land and they didn't acquire it through ill-gotten means, and they grow their own supplies to manufacture their woodworking products, and they are also selling it in a market where the only people that show up, this is totally a fantasy.
Right, yeah. I'm like, does this person actually exist?
No, this person can't possibly exist. The more you're describing
it, I'm like,
I want to meet this person.
Yeah, that sounds utopian.
Straight up, I want to meet this person. I want to see their I want to see how they organize. I want to see their operation, because man, the more I just started talking about it, the more awesomer it sounded. It's like, man, how does this? Can this even exist? No, of course it can't exist. Yeah, that's how you know late stage capitalism is in full effect, is when we can't really even imagine what that would look like, because there are too many structural barriers that we're aware of that do exist. I mean, do we really want to pick to peel the onion back to find a rotten core? I mean, we have to, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like it's definitely it's a good question, because it's like I saw an interview with Vince Staples where he was talking about how like he didn't want to take credit for building America as Black people, and I'm like, you know what? That's actually a really good perspective. He's like, you know, they didn't give us good tools. It was all under duress. This place is janky. I don't want to associate Black construction, like even if it was built on the back of slaves, like we don't want to claim this. I'm like, you know what? He's right. Like I don't want to claim this. Like I don't want to preserve this. And it's a matter of like, then people are, what do you want instead? And it's like, well, have you seen Star Trek? And it's like,
of course they haven't seen Star Trek.
Of course not. No, of course not. People make it seem like that shit isn't possible, when really it's just about like not having 30 families controlling 90% of the fucking capital. That's really the biggest problem.
I saw this visual economic breakdown and visualization of the world's economy is if there were only 100 people, and it turns out that one person controls 90% of the money. That's the distribution.
Yep. Yep.
And also something like 40% of those of the 100 people, 40 people also speak Mandarin. And only like 11 of us can read. It's so fucked up. It's so fucked up. But yeah, most of the money is controlled by one person in that model. 1% of the world's resources are, got one person at the helm. Of course it's rigged. That one person would never want Star Trek to materialize. Because instantly their money doesn't mean anything. And because, I mean, what kind of like personal improvement or intellectual pursuits does that person really have if all they've sought to do is control? I don't think that anyone who it's like the there's like a maxim. It's like the best leaders don't seek power; they have it like foisted upon them or something like that. And I think the same thing goes with like the desire for money. People either they make money because they do something that is beneficial to their community or to society, or they're just doing it because they want to make some money.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's like I don't think there's some gray area where like it's like, oh yeah, we're just doing this because we love it, and all of a sudden now we're doing this because we want to make some money. I don't think that person I don't think that kind of personality shift happens. And I know that money changes people. I've witnessed how people will alter their entire lives because now they can afford to. But I think that the people who set out to make a lot of money right out the gates, they were always like that. They were always going to be like that. I think that's like a cultural thing too.
Yeah, definitely cultural, but it doesn't stop. Like, I saw fucking commercials with like Jamie Foxx and Jeff Goldblum. They're like pushing apartments.com and gambling sites. And I'm like, dude, how would you not have enough? What have you been spending your money on where you have to do commercials now? Because then the Jamie Foxx gambling commercial, he's like portraying himself in the commercial on set somewhere as an actor where it's like, so in this commercial, you're everybody knows you're an actor, but somehow we're supposed to ignore the fact that you're still needing to make money doing this commercial. What is going on? Hasn't Jamie Foxx, he made music. He was a comedian. Hasn't he made enough money by now? Like, there's certain people where I look at them and I'm like, oh, I know you have some sort of addiction to working and it's not even about the money anymore. Like The Rock, he definitely is addicted to work. Like that guy, if he paid you, he would keep doing work and he wasn't getting paid for it. So that's what I'm like, that's definitely some sort of addiction that's clearly like a compulsion. But then you see like the Jeff Goldblums and the Jamie Foxxes, and it's like, I don't know, this doesn't really make sense because like I feel like Kyle MacLachlan
that's true. Like Ryan Reynolds bought a failing soccer team and turned them around, and then they started kicking ass, and then I think he sold them, and then he bought a mobile communications company and then turned it into a successful company, and I'm pretty sure he sold it too. And like he was offering like very affordable family plans, but he's like his goal is to make things better, it seems. But I don't think I can't tell if he's doing it.
I think he just gets bored.
Yeah.
I think he just gets bored. That's what Ryan Reynolds feels like to me because he doesn't stick with things. Like there's certain things that he's done that he doesn't stick with where like he'll sell it off and I'm like, oh, that's out of boredom. Like I don't think neither he nor The Rock has any more altruistic inclination than the other, or than anybody necessarily.
Yeah, but
I
they're
think
like
both of
pretty
them
benign
get
though.
bored.
It's not like,
but they're not, because then that's where, like, okay, for example, when The Rock and Oprah tried to raise a bunch of money, well, not a bunch, tried to raise money, period, for the Hawaiian fires, it's like they clearly were bored, thinking this is going to be, oh, this is a good little fundraiser. We're going to raise a bunch of money, feel good about ourselves. People saw it for that. The Rock apologized because that's basically what it was. It's like they got bored and wanted to, like, quote unquote, raise money from the poors and make themselves feel good, to make the poors feel good by making us feel like we could contribute.
Did they make a matching
wildfires.
contribution to whatever they raised?
They put in 10 million and 5 million or something. I think it was like Oprah put in 10 and The Rock put in 5. So they started off the pot with this, and we're trying to use that they started off the pot as an impetus to get us poors to throw in. So, like, that's where people were like, hey,
wait, did they have some kind of
cool.
stupid shit like, and we're not going to release the funds until we reach our goal?
I don't know any the specifics, but it was like they thought they were doing something. They thought that they were, like, the videos they made, you could tell that they thought that people were going to get really into it, and they thought people were going to react positively to them. Well, it didn't, and The Rock at least owned it. So that's where I know his activities aren't in some, like, empty head. He has a heart and he has a head, and he wants to do good things.
He just doesn't know how all the time.
Exactly.
It's hard to know how to do things.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's where I'm like, I feel like it's the same thing with Ryan Reynolds. It's like, I don't think that they're actually malicious in intent. And I don't think they're necessarily more altruistic than anybody else. They'd have way more capital and way more capacity to execute altruistic endeavors. And when they do it, sometimes they do it in a way that is genuine. And most of the time they do it in a way that's for PR. So, like, I'm not going to knock them for doing the PR.
I'm pretty sure it's for PR if I see a commercial on YouTube.
But here's the thing. Did you know that the founder of Little Caesars paid Rosa Parks rent for 10 years?
No, but that's really cool.
Because he did it for fucking righteousness. He didn't do it for fucking... I only found that shit out yesterday, so I was assuming you didn't know it.
Hell no, I didn't know about that.
So this is where I'm like... I only recently found that shit out because he did it for fucking righteousness. He did it for the justice to make sure that this woman who fought for civil rights didn't have to worry about paying her rent. He didn't do it for fucking recognition. He didn't do it because somebody forced him to. He didn't do it for an apology tour for being canceled. He did it because he could, and he shut the fuck up about it. And the only time people found out was after he died. So, like, that to me is not a issue. Being, if somebody's doing that and you go look it up, you can find it. Because here's some shit where you're like, Ludacris does a lot of stuff for young kids. He just doesn't get recognition for it because he's not out talking about it. So, like, he's not the only one, but there's, like, people who are out doing things where you're like, when you go look for it and then it was reported by someone else and not their PR team and not made into some big publicity stunt, it's very clear the difference when somebody does something out of righteous inclination. And that's not always clear with Ryan Reynolds because, like, the sports team that he salvaged, well, they made a whole TV show about it because he did it with Mac from It's Always Sunny. Like, it wasn't they I think Ryan had more direct involvement with the management, but it was like, yeah, they made a TV show about it. So it wasn't even like,
Yeah, that's like buying a team so you can have a cast.
yeah, that's exactly what it was. And so he wanted to be Ted Lasso, and being able to like buy your way into being Ted Lasso, that's cool as fuck. Not going to take anything away from it. But in the process, there is this like role playing, like cosplaying that he can do as a super rich person that like regular people can't do. That when he does it, we're supposed to feel like he's doing something noble. But it's just the fact that he has all that capital. He can go do whatever the fuck he wants. If he happens to choose to do something noble, as poor people, we're not able to do those things. So then society propagandizes us to make it seem like he's some like almost pious person for choosing to use his capital in those ways, where it's like, even at his level, like one person having that much capacity to go change a bunch of people's lives is really fucked up. Like all those people's lives that were playing on the soccer team that came in and bought. Now, again, he didn't come up with this system. He's just operating in it, and he's like doing really well. And the fact that he chooses to then help people, it's the luck of the draw. It's like most of those people in that position aren't doing. The reason Ryan Reynolds stands out is because most of the people with that much money or more are choosing to exploit people and make everybody else's lives worse. So then it's like them by proxy make Ryan Reynolds more noble, but he's not actually any more noble than a regular person. He just has capital. And that's where it's difficult to like operate as a poor person and see these people going out and like changing somebody else's lives and then not be made to feel lesser than those people, as if because we don't have money, we are not as spiritually noble. And I think, again, that is only possible if you tie spiritual fitness with financial fitness, which again, that's what the Christian church is like very much doing right now.
Spiritual nobility. That sounds like some supply side Jesus type shit. Of course it's an exclusive club. Of course. It would never actually let anyone in. They don't just let anyone in this place. Peter's got a giant list. Are you on the list? I don't know. I'm a +1. Seems like the gap between here, where we are now, and the economic system of Star Trek is like, it might as well be from here to Andromeda.
Well, but we're unfortunately getting accurate to what it looks like before the bell rides, and the timing kind of lines up.
Yeah. Like way too close. God damn it, if we see a fucking Borg sphere, we know we're fucked.
I mean, at the same time, it's like, maybe we're due for some bell riots. Like, it's not fun. It's not good, but the last time America rioted, it was because police brutality. And police brutality didn't go away. So it's like, I don't think they got the point. They didn't get the fucking point. Not to say that riots are the answer, and that's it. As far as like, I don't think violence as a language is a good way to communicate.
Oh crap! We've only got till September. Holy crap!
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah, it's
no!
coming up.
The walled cities are gonna just emerge.
You mean 2 months before the election?
Yeah. Oh no, bastards!
So, you know,
Yeah, Bell Riots 2024 take place September 2024. Oh boy. It'll be fine because at this point, Cisco is well versed in temporal mechanics and will come in and inject like the necessary information we need to get through this.
it's like sometimes I do feel as if we're in the middle of some sort of temporal war and there's two sides and like they're writing like future headlines that affect our modern timeline, and it's like the writing is getting more and more ridiculous the closer we get to those people's like existence or some shit. It's like knowing all of the sci-fi storylines that I've read in my life and all of the sci-fi that I've consumed. I can understand why people feel as if there's some like superlative conspiracy or like the idea of the Mandela effect. I can understand the impetus to want to create something like a Mandela effect to explain certain things about society. But it's like, unfortunately, then those conspiracies are become rooted in such idiocy that then it becomes difficult to have fun conspiracies because there's too many actual dangerous conspiracies like flat earth and shit where you have people who like believe in these things and then you can't even joke about the potential that there's like actual warring time travelers that are dictating our trajectory, because then some idiot is going to hear it and think, oh, this is real. I got the proof. I saw in the Dagon tribes. That's what they said 3,000 years ago. And the fact that you said it now proves it. And it's like, you can't assume that person isn't going to hear some shit and then run with it in a way where it's like, you can't even fucking joke about that shit anymore.
Oh man. Yeah, gone are the days of fun conspiracies that just result in fun. Everything's like so complicated. Right down to the de-icing solution that gets sprayed onto planes so they can fly in the stratosphere. It doesn't activate until it comes into contact with water and is under reaches the temperature, a certain temperature because of friction. But of course, it's a chemtrail. The whole like flat Earth thing. It's like it reminds me that most people are unaware of just how large this planet actually is. That from space you can't even see mountains. I mean, you can see them, but you can't see how tall they are. Every picture that's come back of the Earth, it's like even the high resolution ones. If you're looking at the horizon, you can't see a mountain coming rolling around in the sun. It's like incomprehensibly large. It's so large that it took thousands of years to fully understand that it's not even a sphere.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm constantly baffled at the scale of things because then beyond the scale, like the different temperatures, like think about the surface of the sun and the temperature that we could never even fathom.
Yeah.
And then there's
Yeah.
like the center of the sun. And it's like there are these things happening in our solar system that are so far beyond our brain's comprehension. Like, I could, like, what is something so hot that if you get, within 100,000 kilometers of it, it's gonna disintegrate you? What is that temperature really like? Like, we have no frame of reference. There's no real frame of reference. You know what I mean?
It's a nuclear reaction that's so violent that it's a constantly creating a fission fusion reaction, but it's such a massive object that the flames cannot escape because of gravity. Plasma just can't get away. Occasionally it gets away a little ways, and sometimes it comes out as far as the Earth, but it's rare when that happens. But most of the time, all that plasma, all that fire is contained by gravity. Telling me gravity's a weak force and it can hold back fire. Shit. I know it's a weak force. I'm just being silly about that. But it can hold back the flames of the sun, so that's really impressive. I think that's one of those other things that always boggled my mind. It's like, yeah, we've got gravity on the Earth, but on the sun it's so intense that, it keeps all the planets orbiting it. Something so massive that it causes some other massive object, something the size of a planet, to swing around it for millions and millions and billions and billions of years. It's not fair. We're only around for like a sliver of time and for the Earth. And capable of doing only so many things. I mean, maybe we'll get lucky and like Betelgeuse will explode and we'll get to watch it. Or some other star that's well known will go nova and we'll get to watch it and we'll get to see this stuff. And it's not just like words on a page in an astronomy course. Or a YouTube video, or a I wonder how many people are still get bent out of shape over the volume of computer generated graphic or images that NASA uses to show us what space looks like. I know some people get upset, like, because when they see CGI anything, they're like, "Oh, that's not real." I mean, obviously, everything's computer generated if we use digital photography. But I think that's the dilemma. We've approached this point where the science and technology are actually too much for one person to fully grasp. I mean, maybe there's a few people who understand a lot of things, but we're so far into this stuff that people have to be specialized. And just the crap that I can read off of the internet's not enough to make me it's enough to prepare me for a 101 course.
Do you remember that episode of Voyager when 7 of 9 read too much information, or she like downloaded too much information and started creating conspiracy theories? And was like flipping the fuck out and was like, "You're part of a conspiracy and you're part of a conspiracy," and fucking everybody was part of a conspiracy. That's how everybody's like operating right now. We have like, I think the capacity to have information poisoning, which makes it like, oh dude, have you seen Ryan Garcia?
I have not.
I feel like he has information poisoning. I don't even know if there's like a term for it now. Because like this feels like a new phenomenon in that they kind of forecasted it with that Voyager episode, but it's like when people download or consume a bunch of information, their brain is going to just naturally try to organize it, and it's going to start making connections that don't actually exist because they happen to download a bunch of information. And that's what I think we're seeing in this like information poisoning era, where there's like all this information and we're constantly being inundated with it, and our brains are just trying to make connections arbitrarily because that's what it's been doing for fucking billions of years. And it's not going to stop trying to do it because we happen to read a paper that was from BBC versus one that was CNN.
That kind of information saturation only works in an academic environment where you're surrounded by people who you have the ability to talk about things and work things out and be exposed to other ideas, and also under the guidance of an instructor or an educator or somebody who has spent their lives becoming an expert in that field. And so they're absolutely qualified to talk about it and ensure that the people who are learning this stuff are on the right track and keep them on the right track. It's not the kind of, some of these things are so complicated. Like, you're right. I think that's what's going on. There's just too much access. There's no cultivation. There's a lack of curation. There's almost zero guidance because everyone's an expert. Lately, the things that I find myself listening to from YouTube are like essentially the ASMR version of people who are into audio engineering, and most of the time they just are exploring synthesis or some kind of audio processor, or talking about how to set up a room. But there's very little talking. It's almost all demonstration and dialogue, or not dialogue, text, and even that stuff, it's almost like just like background noise, because it's not nearly engaging enough for me to sit down and take notes, because it's not like an actual lecture, but they're really peaceful. I think I don't like the YouTube stuff where I feel like someone's not just selling me something, but like they're way too hype about what they're doing. Like if I'm looking at a synthesizer or interested in using like a different compressor or EQ, I don't want them to be hype about it. I want to see this stuff being used, and I want to be able to hear, like, appreciate the difference in what it's doing. But it doesn't need to be like, flashing lights or somebody who's just so excited about what they're doing. They just can't wait to tell you all the new features and all the stuff, because that kind of removes the whole discovery process from the equation. And now it's like, oh, now I'm just going over what somebody else told me. Maybe that's another problem. Where is the excitement in discovery when everything is guided and tutorialized, and can't figure it out? Just go to the knowledge base. And I guess that was the old standby, is the manual. Read the manual. I don't think software comes with manuals anymore, though.
I mean, it does. It comes with readmes.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Shit, nothing comes as physical anymore is the issue.
Yeah, yeah. I had an audio interface years ago that came with like 150 pages of dense text with colored images too, to help. I could find the answer to any question about that audio interface in a matter of seconds, because the index was just, fully indexed.
So let me stop you. Have you seen the TV show Monk?
Yeah, I like that.
Do you remember Ambrose Monk?
I don't think so.
Ambrose Monk was Adrian's brother. His occupation was writing instruction manuals, and he was, as a character, he was like a Michelangelo of instruction manuals, and he knew like three or four maybe even five languages, and was writing like all kinds of instruction manuals. And it's like the character is relevant for multiple reasons. It's hilarious.
Oh, the John Turturro character.
Yeah, but in real life, I realized those people exist because as I was building a Gundam last night, I'm like, fuck, this is in Japanese. Like, I've been building Gundams for a while, and these instruction manuals are not in my language, but I'm still able to do it because this goddamn fucking Michelangelo was able to write an instruction manual that anybody could understand, even if they don't fucking speak his language or read his goddamn language. So that's where I literally had that realization last night working on a Gundam with the instruction manual in Japanese. All instruction manual writers are not equal. I mean, it's joke in the show, but in real life, again, it's like when you see an instruction manual that's not in your language, but you still understand all of the instructions enough to complete the project, that's a fucking goddamn artist. But it's such a like small part of society. This is like, to me, in what was it? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, how they're trying to indicate like there's all these people who play these little roles in your universe that you don't really fucking pay attention to. Like the instruction manual writers, nobody gives them their flowers as like regular people. I'm sure they acknowledge each other, but like the people who write instruction manuals make everybody's life so much easier. But could you name one off the top of your head who's actually a person that's not a fucking character? You know what I mean? I couldn't. Now, again, it's not to say that like we're going to be able to go find some index of instruction manual writers and then their ratings or like that probably doesn't exist because society doesn't really value them in that way.
Yeah, I can't think of any instruction manual authors by name or even companies that specialize in that. Haynes. No, that's not true. Haynes. They make automotive manuals so people can fix their old and aging vehicles. I have no idea who actually composes those manuals, though. But they're highly standardized, and so it's not like anyone has to do any real thought. Those things were probably standardized, like, you know, what might as well be 1,000,000 years ago, because I've got a book from like the 90s that looks exactly the same as a book that's from the middle 2000s. The only things that have been changed are pictures. Maybe, and some of the diagrams are still the same, which is crazy.
Ain't broke.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we need to return to like physical manuals, or physical text is actually important. Maybe I was wrong this whole time when I thought paperless desktop. No, that's not true. I still like books. I still like paper manuals. What am I saying? I'm not wrong. Paperless desks still suck, but paper manuals rock. Now if I can only get rid of these doom piles.
You say Dune?
Doom, like disorganized mess piles. It's this it's a behavior of like disorganized organization where objects get piled in places because they don't have a place to go. It's like an interim. It's a strategy that locates things that need to be organized but don't have a place so that you can organize them later. The problem is that they end up staying put because on some weird level they're kind of organized. And I didn't realize that I was doing this until I read about it online. I decided to let Google give me targeted ads because they kept giving me a bunch of junk, and I was tired of seeing junk. Next thing I know, I'm seeing stuff that's like productivity hacks. Although it's not really a hack, it's more like just something one can do to become more productive. Why are things called hacks when they're not actually hacks? That's something that actually is a problem. Not everything is a hack. Some things are actually how things should be done. I saw someone refer to it as a productivity hack as the assignment hack. It's like a way to spur productivity by giving yourself deadlines. Well, that's I'm pretty sure that's how deadlines are met. You have people to get assignments and they have deadlines, and that's how things get done.
Well, I think time management is definitely taken for granted. And it's like Americans definitely believe that adults just know time management and don't need to learn it, which is the farthest thing from the truth. So there's just so many things. Like learning project management, and by proxy, time management of groups helped me understand like how to better manage my time as an individual. But it's also like learning to differentiate between what's high priority and low priority is like it's not necessarily gonna happen on its own. So there are a lot of things about this is where I think college is good for failing in a controlled setting. It makes it a lot easier to succeed if you learn how to prioritize and learn like what's the least likely scenario to make you fail something. It's like it, it's more than just, I think the way they used to do home economics is one type of time management. But like personal enrichment, for example, it's like, how do you know when you need to set aside time for personal enrichment or for personal development or for just personal care? And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I know adults aren't going to be prepared for that in general without training, but I'm just not sure how many adults are willing to like even accept help on those issues.
Well, I mean, there are the people that do intend to go to college, and they may want help, may need help, may not be willing to get help. But I think there's also the portion of the population that just flat out rejects higher education. They're never going to change. They've already got it figured out for the most part. At least that's the way it seems when I read the comment sections. I got to stay away from the comment sections in some of these places.
Yeah, that has increased my life. Like enjoyment of social media is like just not diving into comment sections. Because it's like, I don't know what the number is, but it's only a matter of comments before you see something that's absurdly sexualized or racial, and it's like neither one are gonna be something that make your day better. And it's like I've gotten, when it comes up on my timeline and I'm not in the comment section, I'm reporting it almost every time now, and I'm feeling a lot better because those reports, they're like 50% success rate. So it's not even about being successful every single time so much as like if something comes across my timeline that like just is racist or sexist for no reason, and I can report it, and then there's a chance that it's like that person's gonna get their account locked, that at least makes me feel some agency in what I'm seeing. Whereas like when you're in a comment section and like consuming stuff that's making you mad, you're being manipulated in that moment.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Even though you chose to keep continuing to click, that is a level of manipulation that when it's out of control, it results in like just constant online bickering back and forth that the algorithm is feeding. But it's like, I know that exists, so I can avoid it. But even knowing that it exists, it's hard to like avoid it when people like, the more egregious the racism or the sexism, the more difficult it is to just pass it by without like feeling the need to like say something or do something, because it's like at that point it's in your psyche and they've polluted your psyche with it and you want to do something with it. And I think that's where there is this, it's easier to keep spreading the shit than it is to like stop the spread of the shit, which is why I think it's like, just so hard for people to like disengage from those things. It's not easy to disengage. It's legitimately easier to keep engaging. So I completely understand when like older people get wrapped up in online fucking arguments all day. So
Yeah.
it's not like, I don't understand the biological response, but it's also, it feels good to have control over your response to an algorithm.
Man, amen to autonomy.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos shows produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.